Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hey, guys. Good to see you all.
You sound better this week.
Yeah. It's amazing what meds and sleep will do.
Well, tonight we have an unusual take on a debate. I haven't seen anybody do it this way. So I'll just start out. Most people are aware of the Trent Horn versus Pearl Davis debate, which happened within the last week. And everybody commonly just streams the debate and then stops it and makes comments. And, kind of goes back and forth. But there were things about that debate that just irritated me. So what we're going to do is just look at what primarily look at what Trent said. We're going to play his intro, his introductory statement. Then we're going to play his rebuttal to Pearl. And we're not going to focus on Pearl. We're just going to go through what Trent said. And does it make sense? What are our comments on that? And then I picked out a couple other clips where we're going to go into some of his claims. But a big component of this is highlighting certain comments that people left on the bottom of the video. Now, the comments on bottom of videos is a very poor way of communicating. If it's a very low view stream that maybe 20 people or 50 people look at, you can have 10, 12 comments and you can have some discussion. But when you get one of these big ones, you might have 500, 700 comments. Whatever is left there usually gets lost because hardly anybody wades through the comments to pick out the gems or see what the general tone of the comments are. So what I did is I went through the comments and picked out a few from women and a few from men. And there were very few from men. Most of them were from women, but we'll get there. So Plutarch has been the technical person behind this, so he's going to cue up some of this. But what do you guys have to showing?
Repeat yourself.
Do you guys want to say anything before we jump in?
I'm good. I'm also a little annoyed with this guy because I've had to listen to him about 24 times now as I've scrubbed through this thing making the clips. But there's a point where I'm going to stop it, and I want you guys to pay attention because this slipped by me the first time I watched it. So I'll stop that and point. When I get there, we'll stop that and point it out for you.
And I'll say I watched this and had some private comments. Let's just say he wouldn't get away saying that crap to my face.
All right, let's go.
Well, Pearl has the burden of showing that marriage is a bad deal for men, and all I have to do is show that she hasn't made her case. And notice in Pearl's opening statement, she never cites a study of married men in general to see whether they think marriage is a bad deal. So to show that she's wrong, I'm going to point out 3 fallacies that Pearl makes in her arguments. So first, there's the wrong target fallacy. For example, Pearl talks about how marriage is a bad deal because men are sometimes mistreated in child custody cases. That's not unique to marriage. If you cohabit or even just hook up with a woman, you can still father a child and deal with custody issues. However, marriage makes a man the presumed father of the child with natural rights unmarried fathers don't have, even though unmarried fathers can still be liable to pay child support. The children of unmarried men are 10 times more likely to be aborted. And if the child does survive the pregnancy, he's 3 to 6 times more likely to live in poverty. The hazards of unmarried, much less for married men. Another wrong target is women themselves. Pearl says marriage is bad for men because modern women are worse than previous generations of women. But that says nothing about marriage. If modern women are good enough for hookups that can result in children, or cohabiting relationships that superficially feel like marriage, but are far more likely to fail, then modern women are good enough for marriage, which has less of marriage. It shows men and women.
Okay, so hold on. If you're married or you're not married, you can all pay child support. So shouldn't there be some benefits to being married? But the benefits of that, he talks about, if you're unmarried, the child is more aborted or more likely to be in poverty. But I'm married to protect my child. But what are these benefits that he talks about that my natural rights? I don't understand, because that wasn't my experience. Nick, do you have any natural rights?
I do, but the court is tyrannical as a usurping tyrant. They deny fathers their natural rights every day.
Okay, so in practice, he talked fast and loose through this, but in reality,
it's all about the kids right here. He says, let's not talk about the women. I mean, let's not talk about how bad women are. Let's talk about basically how fathers need to be there, how fathers have benefits if they're not fathers have benefits, but the children have benefits if the fathers stay in the home.
He said how fathers have benefits, but the benefits to fathers are not benefits to fathers. It's about the kids.
Benefits to kids, which I understand. You want kids to be well.
Yes, I'm not against kids.
So why do you want to promote an institution where it's easy for men to get wrecked and remove them from the marriage and remove them from their kids?
Okay, well, we covered that. And then he says, and then he also said, if a woman is good enough to sleep with, she's good enough to marry.
Oh, God.
Wait a minute.
Oh.
That one does not compute to me. But then another fast and loose, and then he talks fast and he throws out, how much shit do you have to throw against the wall to see what sticks? Okay, you guys have anything more, or let's continue?
Men are both in bad shape compared to previous generations, but there's hope. Marriage is the best way for men and women to mature together and bring out the best in one another. Second, there's the anecdote fallacy. One sad story about a marriage does not show marriage itself is bad, because for every sad story Pearl can bring up, I can statistically bring up.
He just skates over all the horror stories that the red pill brings out. This man has not spent a day in the district courthouse like I have. I hear horror story after horror story after horror story. There's a reason there is an industry for divorces.
What? It's not just one. It's not just one horror story.
No.
Okay, wait.
Everybody's heard my horror story. I'm not the only one. You had a horror story.
Here's the beauty. And he's about ready to say, for every one horror story, he's going to say, there are 4 or 5 stories from men of their good marriages. Sorry, I know men, a lot of men that I work with, and 50+% of them have been divorced, and it didn't go well. And then I
thought I had a good marriage until 6 months later.
Okay, and I know some other married guys who are not getting any sex.
Right.
They happily
That's not
married.
a good marriage. Hell no.
No. Okay, and then he's later on, and I'll say this now, he's going to claim about men who claim they're happy in marriage. Well, you know what? I claimed I was happy in marriage until
Me
she
too.
divorced me.
Same here, by the way. And I want to point something else out here too. I said I was happy in my marriage even after months of no sex, yelling fights, all of that, to everyone else. Why? Because that's what we demand to hear
That's
from
right.
other men.
Yep. So we got to keep going.
2 to 3 good stories about happy marriages. And there are many stories about sad, sick, lonely men who never marry. Pearl cannot prove her case with anecdotes. She needs actual data that proves married men are worse off than unmarried men, but no such data exists. Even marriage skeptics will only argue at best that marriage doesn't increase happiness. They all agree that men who marry are better off concerning health, wealth, and happiness than men who never marry. If Pearl can't provide peer-reviewed data to prove
Can we
otherwise,
stop
then
there,
her
right? Okay, wasn't there a couple Bible passages about being in the desert or the corner of a roof?
It's better to live in the corner of a rooftop than with a contentious woman.
I think I'll go with God there.
And you know, all this, oh, it's better to, men are better off married than unmarried. That has nothing to do with why men shouldn't get married because marriages go bad. It's like, oh, I have a supposedly crappy outcome of not getting married. So I'm going to get married to be happy, but no, or content and have kids. But then that goes to shit. But even if that goes to shit, I'm better off than if I never married at all. You know, this is wacky logic.
I mean, people are glad to have kids and crap, but it's different when you're stuck in a house with a contentious wife. I'm going to go with what the Bible says.
No, you're not supposed to do that, Nick. The Bible is no Catholic. The Catholic Church is right.
Oh, they know better than the Bible?
Hold
They
on
do.
here. Hold on. I'm Catholic. And I'm
I know,
offended
that's
by
what-
that comment. And I will say right now, Trent does not speak for the Catholic Church.
There you go.
All
I'm glad to
right.
hear that.
Good.
case fails. Third, there's the comparison fallacy. Instead of stories involving the risks of marriage, Pearl often at times just points to the risks of marriage itself and says that's a good enough reason to not marry. She says, just as you wouldn't fly on a plane that has a 5% chance of crashing, you shouldn't get married, even if it has similar low odds of divorcing.
Hold
But
on.
you look-
hold
but if-
on. 5% similar low odds. Marriage does not, if marriage only had a 5% chance of failing, hey, you know, I'd probably take that chance again because I like being married. I enjoy having a wife. God made me that way. But marriage does not have a 5% failure rate. So this is bullshit again.
I think most guys, if there was only a 5% chance, would be racing to the churches to get married. 95% chance of a girl willing to actually have sex with me and stick around for a long time to, like, I don't know, guys, that sounds pretty good. And yet
That's
we're not
1 in
doing
20 or 20, one chance of failure out of 20 chances of success.
Yeah.
Man, why isn't everybody rushing to get married then?
Or 1 out of 19, actually.
Man, that sounds like some really good odds there. I mean,
I'd
but we all know that's
take
bullshit.
those odds. I would take those odds.
You look at the worst outcomes of one choice while ignoring the worst outcomes of another choice, that's the comparison fallacy. It's like someone who thinks driving is safer than flying because they only read a bunch of stories about plane crashes and never think about car crashes. Of course, flying is far safer than driving, and marriage is less risky than non-marriage. You cannot compare the best outcomes of...
What are the risks of non-marriage? I think I understand the risks of marriage because I've experienced them. He's comparing one to the other. Now, what is this comparison? Okay, if I don't get married, I financially am not at risk and I won't have to pay all this money. My only risk is not having children. But that's not really a risk, it's a missed opportunity. Just saying.
Well, there is a camp, and we see this in the Daily Wire crowd specifically, of saying that it is bad and therefore a risk, not a missed opportunity for you to not pass on your genetic legacy. So what he might be doing is something I see a lot of people do these days. He's not approaching it objectively. He's saying my viewpoint, his bias is that this is bad, and therefore he comes at it from a standpoint of this is bad, this is a risk, you shouldn't do this for you, without understanding that men might not see it that way. They might not have his personal bias on the subject.
Well, he's a man. Shouldn't he be talking about how men see things?
Yeah, we'll get into that.
Okay.
Non-marriage to the worst outcomes of marriage. To be fair, you must compare the typical outcomes in both cases, be it flying versus driving or marriage versus non-marriage. And Pearl exaggerates the harms of marriage and ignores the harms of not marrying. For example, according to the National Center for Family and Marriage Research, the median length of all marriages is not 7 to 8 years, as Pearl often claims. That's the length of marriages that end in divorce, not all marriages. The median length for all marriages is 21 years. And the divorce rate is closer to 35%, not 50%. 50% was a future projection from the
Okay, here we go.
Okay. Sorry, I forgot to unmute. Did y'all hear that? He slipped it out real quick, and I missed it the first time I watched this video. He said that the divorce rate is closer to 35%, not the oft-quoted 50%. How do y'all think he got that number?
I have no idea because it's commonly accepted that 50% of marriages end up in divorce, and that's been quoted for years now.
Yeah.
Okay. So as I was scrubbing through the videos, I went, okay, wait, this is like the third time I've listened to the video, but wait a minute, something doesn't stack up here. So I just typed into my little searcher here, US divorce rate 2024. And the first thing that pops up is an article from Forbes in January 8th to 2024. And it says key divorce statistics in 2024. In 2021, a total of 689,308 divorces occurred in the 45 US states that report this statistic. And during that same year, 2021, 1,985,072 marriages occurred. Now, has anyone caught the primary problem with this number? Nick, you want to? I mean,
there's several issues, but it's only taking it for that specific year. But secondly, that year is an odd year because of the COVID crap. So it's not a normative year. So, but it's also it's for that only that specific year. It's not over time.
So it's marriages in 1 year versus divorces, which some of those people have been married for 20, 30, or 40 years. It's a lifetime. It's a cumulative number of all marriages that were divorced in that year compared to the newly married people who were married in that year. And it's apples and oranges.
Okay.
Plus, let me point out something else. He's saying it's not 50%. It's only 35%. It's not half. It's only a third. But previously, he was comparing it to the 5%. by his anecdote.
Oh.
1 in 20. So
Oh.
what is it, Trent? What is it? What are you trying to do here, Trent? It seems like you're throwing around all kinds of different statistics, mixing it up, so no one knows what the hell you're talking about. But you seem awfully confident in that.
He's a confident bullshitter. And well, because here's the problem. The 50% number comes from total number of marriages that end. What we're saying is half of all marriages end. We're not talking about the ratio between marriages and divorces in a given year. It's an invalid number, but he slides it in there really quick and then hits back with, and that's why you're wrong. And the reason people do this, now, either he's incredibly unintelligent and doesn't know what he did there, or he's dissembling. He's lying to you, hoping to get you to buy what he's selling. And to me, this is the worst kind of debate to be in, because to corner these guys, you have to have your numbers up in front of you with sources. You have to know everything that he could possibly throw at you. Getting this kind of prep work done is very difficult.
Yep.
And it's virtually impossible that you're going to catch everything that he sends your way. He's what I call the turd flinging monkey of debate.
Yeah, it's cool. It's hard. He's giving you a bunch of inductive data, which you don't have time to verify. You don't have the sources for. You don't have competing sources for, versus deductive, which is basically rational argumentation using logic. It's different.
Oh, and then he calls everything Pearl had said as anecdotal stuff, whereas he's using numbers, which implies he has knowledge of statistics. It's a bullshit technique. He's not even applying logic here. If you say something logical, a logical conclusion, by this method, he's saying any logical conclusion is anecdotal and therefore not to be listened to.
Well, and I'm going to get myself in a little bit of trouble here because I love statistics. And that's why you'll see me try to come with the data and then put it on screen for you guys. The stream we did where we were talking about financial asset distributions. That's hard data, and I threw it up there for you guys, and you guys can discuss, but no one really disagrees with it because the data came from the Fed. I can go get the source data if you'd like, but the visualization was just easier to work with.
And we only used one source of data on that. And then we discussed it.
Yeah.
You didn't mix and match
Exactly.
a percentage from here and something from there to form a narrative to make your point. No, we was one thing, and we look at one thing and discussed it. That's way different than what Trent is doing here.
Right. And that's why we call this exposing the narrative. We will bring you something. We will show you our data, and we will say, okay, guys, what do you think about this? Here's what we thought. What do you think? This is he's throwing pasta at the wall, hoping to really snow in Pearl. You send so much data at your opponent that they can't react at all. And as a tactic, it's effective, but it's slimy. And if he tried this in a formal debate setting, which these guys claim they are, but they're not, he'd get blown out. This is not okay.
That's the type of thing you'd want to present beforehand so that the opponent has a fair chance of having time to deal with the presented data.
Exactly.
Well, that would be called good faith.
Yep.
Where what Trent is doing here is bad faith.
Yep. Continue.
Yep.
From the 80s that has since been falsified. In fact, we are now seeing the lowest divorce rates since 1970, about 14 divorces per 1,000 married women. For weekly churchgoers, the divorce rate is half the average rate. Also, just because 35% of marriages end in divorce, that doesn't mean you have a 1 in 3 chance of absolute misery. Divorce sucks.
Hold
but
on.
people typically...
He just screwed himself here. 35% of marriages end in divorce. So now he's going back to the traditional end in divorce, which is the 50% number. By his bullshit calculations, he came up with that 35% number, and now he's actually defining it to replace actual data.
It's a psychological tactic. This is a tactic. It's the base tactic is called anchoring. You set your expectation, and then you anchor your argument to it.
That is sophisticated.
Which is why I don't believe he's stupid.
No, he's not. He
knew what he was doing.
Studied theology. He's an intelligent man.
He knew what he was doing with these numbers. He knew what he was doing.
Survive it intact. In fact, men do better than women after divorce. Men's income increases by 20% on average, while women are twice as likely to fall into poverty after divorce. Alimony is only paid out in less than 10% of divorces. And according to the U.S. Census Bureau,
do men do better after divorce because eventually they bail themselves out and they make more money than women because they're more productive? So eventually, over time, men are going to build wealth, where women don't produce as much as they consume. So they will, over time, fall into poverty,
right,
sooner or later. Right?
Yeah, this is another one of playing with statistics. It's called cherry picking. He's picking the narrative, the data that supports his narrative out, and then ignoring the longer run data that shows that so women tend to do very well in the short term after divorce. Men tend to absolutely crush women in the long term. So he's saying, oh, well, because women do better, and then not saying in the short term after divorce, that therefore it's actually better for men to get married because they're going to do better in the long term. Well,
okay. Continue.
Average child support payment is $441 a month, of which only 60% usually ends up getting paid. Moreover, women do not get child custody.
Hold on. Average, that's meaningless. It's based on my income. And in my case, it was not even my income. It was based on my imputed income because they said I could earn more, even though the economic conditions had changed. And so they needed to extract maximum out of me because I was a relatively high earner to raise the average. And so, yeah, I paid considerably more than that. And then the woman who's married to a poor man gets considerably less. So this 440 average means nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, hey, hold on. Wait a minute here. He has the presumption that women are entitled to keep the kids because they're better off having the kids. This is a development that's only happened in modernity in the last 100 years. Prior to that, the custody of the children was always the men. So let's not cry for the women for how badly they're doing with the payment when, you know what? She wouldn't even have to worry about it. The man is responsible under God, under his authority. They're his children. He's responsible for 100% when they're under his care. This is a whole artificial contrivance.
So what that means is when the state takes them away from the father, biblically, you know what that's called? kidnapping, stealing, man stealing, or child stealing from the head
Wait,
of the household.
but Trent is supposedly a Catholic. Does he not understand what biblical marriage is and who is in authority? We'll get to that later.
Mm.
90% of the time, as others claim. 95% of custody cases are mutually agreed upon outside of the courtroom. Women get full custody 40% of the time, men get full custody 20%, and shared custody makes up the remaining 40%. Women usually get full custody because men don't ask for it. In a Massachusetts study of 24,000 divorces, only 8% of men sought custody, and 94% of them got full or partial custody. Finally, a 2006 study in the Journal of Epidemiology and Community Health showed that while divorced men were 27% more likely to die prematurely.
Okay, I want to stop here because did you all see he quotes a study from a single state?
And then he says it's the reason men don't get custody is because they don't ask. Where are the statistics that make the causation? Yeah, men don't ask. I can accept that part. But what is their motivation for not asking? Is there any studies to support that?
I can think of a couple of reasons. One, as Nick said, if you know you're not going to get it, why ask? And two, we've heard horror stories of, and this goes to what Stephen was saying. We've heard horror stories of guys who they ask, and then they're told by the opposing lawyer, if you ask, we'll say that you abused the kids. And so the guy withdraws the petition. So if the study is only of the final disposition of the case, well, they don't know that there was a conversation between the lawyers before it ever got on the docket. And so the guy was encouraged not to ask before it ever got there. I don't know,
Yes.
Nick, you can tell me how common that is.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'd
Yes,
rather
and
have
I
custody of my
fully
kids,
agree.
but I was
because
already slammed with
this
false
is-
accusation.
This is my experience too. But Plutarch, you are that's anecdotal.
Oh, okay.
But Trent used anecdotal because, and he listed the cause. Your anecdotes are more believable than his anecdotes, but he rattles through that with a causation that's mixed in this numbers that you think that's true. It's bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Nick,
He's overwhelming the debate with numbers that nobody has a chance to verify. It's hard to track. It's extremely irritating, and it's like this is a terrible way to debate.
it's
He
a
should do
terrible way
that.
to do a debate. It's very effective at doing what he's trying to do. He's not
It's
here to
just what-
debate. Not really.
He's there to overwhelm and try to show his dominance or something.
He's there to win, not discover the truth, and not preserve marriages, not help men. And divorce hurts children. It hurts me, yeah, but it hurts my children. That is my biggest goal. And by doing this bullshit, he's actually damaging children.
Yes.
58% of never married men were more likely to die early. Never married men risk growing older and having few or no social connections. Pearl can tell lots of horror stories, apparently, about men going through messy divorces. And my wife, who is a registered nurse, can tell you all kinds of horror stories about men dying alone in the hospital, spending every day by themselves.
Okay. I have a bit of bad news for everyone. We all die alone. It is rare that any human gets to die with their family around them. So yes, I'm sure that your nurse wife has been around many a man dying alone in the hospital. I noticed
Yeah.
he didn't say that they were married before and she died before him. He didn't stipulate that.
He also just threw out a couple more percentages since we last stopped. He keeps throwing in these percentages of this and that, and then anecdotal evidence, and it's like a bowl of mush. But you think it's the best soup with chunks of roast beef in there. No, it's a pile of mush. It's a bowl of mush.
That's a really polite way of saying something else, Steve.
Well, it took us it took Steve and I and Nick hours to go through this thing and to pull out all of the bullshit sandwich that this thing is. Honestly, I don't know how Pearl was supposed to quote unquote win against this guy. I don't know any of us who could do it.
We're damn near halfway through our podcast. we're not even 20% of the way through the information we have here.
Well,
this is how bad it is.
I'm up to go long if you gentlemen are.
I'm fine.
Yeah, this is fun.
All right.
Staring at the same blotch on the ceiling because they had no one to ever come and visit them. Now, some men desire marriage and are unable to find a wife, which is tragic. But rejecting marriage out of fear is like the person who refuses to go to the hospital because he worries about medical errors, but doesn't think about people dying at home from easily treatable illnesses. The comparison fallacy once again. That's probably why 65% of divorced men get remarried. 93% of men say they would marry their spouse again if they could do marriage over. If Pearl...
Okay, gentlemen, would any of you remarry your spouse again? 93%,
No.
one of us should.
Okay, I will address that. Initially, yes, because when she divorced me, I lost the fantasy of what I thought it could be, and I want the fantasy. George Bruno talks about this, and I learned this from him, that when there's a great loss, it's not just loss of your wife, it's loss of the fantasy of what could be. And yeah, you want that back. But again, switching gears, he threw out 2 more percentages again, and then he's mixing in anecdotal evidence. So it's again a pile of mush or a bowl of mush.
Well, okay, he says his wife is a nurse. How do we know she isn't working geriatrics?
But no way of knowing that.
Yeah, he throws out his wife nurse. Okay, if she works geriatrics, yeah, she's going to see an awful lot of people dying alone. That's the nature of that particular job.
Hey, my dad died a few months ago. The hospice nurses checked on him weekly. And hospice nurses deal with a lot of old people. And you know what? A lot of times their spouse is already dead.
Yeah.
There's got to be a lot of stories of old people dying alone.
Statistically, half of them should die alone. I mean, just if you're married, somebody's going to outlive the other person. That is the nature of it. It's unfortunate, but sorry, guys, one of you is going to live longer than the other. So, which means that if half of all marriages end in divorce before we get there, yeah, most people are going to be staring at the ceiling alone when they die. That's the math is true. It's just specious.
So half, 50% of people get divorced and dies as singles. And then the other 50% die as married. That would leave only 25% die with their spouse still living. And there
correct.
we go. 1 in 4. Wow, that's an interesting statistic.
Well, that doesn't include remarriages, so I mean, yeah, that's the
Right.
statistic. But
Oh, I'm sure 1 in 4 is a wild overestimation of the number of people who die with their spouse by their side. So what we're trying to show here, guys, is that he is technically correct, but he's technically correct in the worst kind of way, because he's not really saying why he's correct. And when you look at why he's correct, you go, oh, well, that's just how it's going to be anyway.
Pearl is right, as she said in the past, that marriage is a death sentence for men. Then why do most men voluntarily go back to death row after they've been released, i.e. divorced? Well, it's because these men correctly identify what Pearl has failed to grasp. Marriage is not bad for men. It's not a bad deal for men. In fact, marriage is typically a good deal for men. It's no wonder God told Adam in the book of Genesis, it's not good for man to be alone. And so he made Eve to remedy this problem. Now, to make it clear, it is a lie that
marriage is a good deal for men. Now, okay, Pearl's talking about modern, secular marriage. And now Trent is bringing in the Bible, and, marriage is good for men. Yes, God designed me to want a wife, to want to be married. Okay, modern marriage sucks. And you can go back to Genesis, and I've done streams on that. I think I did one with Glenn. Maybe we can redo that one too, to just, we got to keep going back to some of these basic things, because people don't always go back and look at at the old streams. But okay, it's mixing the modern with the ancient. And
mixing, it's also mixing God created it good, and then there's the fall. So it's different in the estate of sin. Even though it's still good in the estate of sin, now you have to deal with sin. And sometimes sin can be really, really bad for marriage at certain points in time in certain societies.
Okay, and the claim is Pearl is anti-marriage. Is Pearl anti-sacramental marriage, or is she anti-secular marriage? Or modern marriage, whatever the current version of marriage as how it's practiced. Is Pearl against God's form of marriage?
I don't know. I don't think so, but I ultimately don't recall. So,
well, what is Pearl arguing against?
Modern marriage. Marriage as it's currently practiced.
She's not really arguing against God's form of sacramental marriage. I've never heard her say that.
Rollo does a similar thing. He says he's not against marriage. He's against marriage as how it's currently, legislated, practiced, etc.
And I've listened to a number of streams where Pearl says, she says, I'm against the way we do marriage today. I think that's an exact quote from her. I don't know what stream, but she said it on multiple different streams. She's not hiding what she is and is not fighting, guys. She's not.
No, and you have to listen to what she doesn't say and what she doesn't attack, and contrast that to what she does attack. But nobody wants to do that. This marriage concept in most Christian minds in America just means, the way I see marriage practiced here, which of course I'm going to get a marriage license. How absurd is it that you have to get a license from the state to access the sacrament in the church?
Did the United States always give marriage licenses?
No.
So you can get married without state licensing it historically?
Historically, but it would be against the law today.
My understanding of the history of licensing was specifically the state was concerned about inbreeding and intra-family marriage. And so they brought it in as a way for them to go back and search the records and say, well, we can't issue this license because you'd be marrying your cousin.
That's and the state has always been concerned with inheritance where property goes.
Yes.
And somebody needs to track who's married because that really affects inheritance. And it's just a fact. Prior to Martin Luther separating from the Catholic Church, the marriages were recorded in the church, and they were all Catholic at that time in Germany, and pretty much everywhere else in Europe. Then Luther separated from the Lutheran Church, and he did not want the Catholics to have control of the marriages because that would you can't do that. You're separating, you can't let your opponent have control. So then the marriages had to be recorded someplace else, which is where the state came in Germany, and that practice continued. That's my understanding. Now, if I'm wrong, someone can correct me.
Well, ideally,
not necessarily
it's
here.
a common institution, not necessarily. You don't necessarily need the church for it, but I think the state and the church ideally ought to be included, but sometimes you don't want them included.
But it does it is important that the marriage be recorded and documented.
Right.
Because it is binding, and both the state and the church have an interest in the binding nature of marriage.
Mm-hmm. Except when so for instance, let's say we have this Troons church that does the rainbow, right? Do you want them in control of your marriage? No. Oh, but we have the same thing in the state. Do you want them in control of your marriage? Where they can kidnap your kids and everything else and try to destroy your marriage instead of protect it? Hell no.
Well, and I think this is where we lost the plot, because it was, at least in the United States, because it was originally done to prevent inbreeding, that gave the state this sort of legal right to come in and decide what all these things about a marriage. Okay, yes, we want somebody to record marriages. We in a multi denominational, multi-orthodoxy country, it can't really be like, as Steve was pointing out, it can't really be one of the churches. Okay, so it's probably going to be the state, but then the state leverages its position as the arbiter now to do all this other stuff that is very definitely putting its thumb on the scale for one gender, shall we say.
It's complicated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is hard stuff, guys. All right.
That half of all marriages end in divorce. The truth is that most marriages last a lifetime, and 80 to 90% of them identify as happy. A Gallup survey conducted between 2008 and 2020 of 800,000 adults showed that marriage...
Hold on. You said half of marriages end in divorce, but didn't he previously say it was 35%? And now he said the majority of people are happy or whatever. So he went from, we've gone from 5 to 50 to 35 to 50 to the majority, which is more than 50. Oh, man. Whoa.
Well, this is how you know he doesn't actually have command of the data. He in his own mind, he's mixing threads. When you're trying to do deception detection, one of the things you look for is you ask a question different ways, and you see how the answer changes. It's not to say that the answer changing itself means deception. You are asking the question in a different way. But when you cannot keep the core of your data straight, you're dissembling. You're deceiving, because his brain knows that data isn't true, and so his brain isn't latching onto it. It can't keep it. It can't. So he'll spit out the true data when he's talking about something else.
So the truth leaks out when he's not paying attention?
Well, yes, sir.
Hey, we're going to come back to that theme, right?
Yes.
Married people rate their well-being 12 to 17 points higher than unmarried people. The General Social Survey from the University of Chicago, a gold standard in sociological research, shows that married men are twice as likely to rate their lives as very happy when compared to non-married men. And the majority of married men, in fact, I'd say 80% of them, identify themselves as happy. Married men also make 10 to 20% more money per hour, and they have more sex than never married men. Pearl says that men face sexless marriages, but the General Social Survey shows that unmarried men are twice as likely to have a sexless life than a married man. Studies also show that even men who end up divorced live longer.
He's playing fast and loose with those sex numbers there.
How many numbers did he cite there? Percentages and numbers that were playing fast and loose with data. But now you got to the key thing.
So he's saying unmarried men are having less sex than married men. I'm like, well, I don't have a problem with that. I don't think they should.
Wait a minute. Shouldn't married men be having zero sex? So married men should be having infinitely more sex?
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding.
But they're only twice as likely. And how many marriages do you know that are virtually zero, or maybe 5 to 10 times a year?
A lot of the Christian marriages.
Steve, 5 to 10 times a year is wildly optimistic, speaking from experience.
I can. I'm trying to be optimistic here.
Yeah, this is incredible looseness with numbers. The church says that unmarried men should not be having sex. So if you're saying, so what he's really saying here is that this is a degree fallacy, which is it's an informal fallacy, but he's trying to say, hey, look, okay, men are having twice as much sex in marriage. Well, that tells me two things, because you also said unmarried men are not having nearly as much sex. Okay, well, that's a good thing for men that unmarried men in the church, that they're not having sex. But you also told on yourself. There's not a whole lot of sex going on in marriages if it's only twice as much as unmarried men.
Hey, and
he doesn't specify. He doesn't specify how much. See, married men have sex. Obviously, you're married, but it's not. They're not talking about where's the number of what's the frequency. Where's
and of course, this is all self-reported data, so
right.
Who knows the quality of it?
Okay.
Economically better off and are just as or even happier than never married men. Now, Pearl might say these studies only prove that happier, richer men get married and unhappy, poor men don't get married. But when you look at the typical married man, he is not a 6'2" rich Chad. Moreover, if a man chooses to marry, then he needs to become marriageable, which involves developing positive traits that both make him desirable to women and improve his own self-esteem at the same time. But I'm not arguing that marriage makes people happy. I'm arguing against Pearl's claim that marriage is a bad deal for men and steals their happiness. That's just not true. In fact, marriage is the best. You can't interrupt when I'm talking.
You get a 5-minute after this. He's got.
Okay, this I have to chalk up to Pearl is inexperienced with this style of debate. This opening and rebuttal. This is a formal debate thing, even though they're not following all the formal debate rules. And y'all, look at how just like happy he is that she jumped him.
He's like, I got you.
Yeah.
Now, how many percentages and numbers and playing fast and loose? And Pearl's mind is just absolutely spinning here. She's going, what the fuck? And she just couldn't contain herself. And she burst out saying, I didn't say that. I mean, that's a natural reaction.
Yeah.
You have to be very disciplined to control that.
Right. And that discipline comes with experience in this kind of debate. And we don't do this kind of debate that much anymore. Anyway, so he just doesn't have the opportunity to have this style of debate. And I, it is a technical error on her part, but he does not do himself any favors by jumping down her throat over it.
He's very pleased with himself.
Yes. So you can
look at that expression on his face. He planned on this happening.
Yes.
Yeah, that's my assumption.
Oh, no,
that's my guess.
Correct.
He planned on it.
Yeah. So whenever somebody doesn't play by the debate rules or gets emotional, it shows like the other side generally is winning the debate. It's an indication,
Well, and that's what there's a theme running through all these clips that we're going to show, and that is he is using the rules of debate and the form of debate to prove to people that he won the debate. And we have comments here that we'll get into, but this is the theme that we're building up to, is that he won on form. So, and he did. Yeah. He
Not
did
substance.
win on substance. The guy's got bullshit for substance. So
1 minute. You're okay.
There will be time. I'm excited for that. Okay. In fact, marriage is the best way for men to not just hang on to happiness, but to increase it. The Harvard study of adult development, which tracked people for 80 years, said good relationships were the #1 predictor of happiness. And it showed that men who married ended up happier and lived 7 to 17 years longer than men who never married. And that's a study for people over 80 years of their life.
Okay. This is another mess with stats that I have to talk about. It is a study over people of 80 years of their lives. That means we're talking about people who are 80 years old.
Right. Different generation, different ethics, and moral system.
Pearl isn't talking about people who were born in 1940. I think we can all agree that people born in 1940 or 45 or whatever you want to do generally had a very well-developed sense of morality and ethics. They just got done fighting a major war against a morally bankrupt enemy. And they had a very strong sense of community, and the community, I'm sure, played a large part in how they conducted themselves through the courses of their personal lives. Okay.
Yeah, they weren't raised by single mommies, majority of them.
The vast majority of them. Yeah. So I can understand how at the end of their lives, they reported more happiness being married than not married. In that morality, in that ethics, and that culture, I probably would too, but I'd probably still be married to my first wife, and she probably wouldn't have been a run-through whore, so all of those things put together, your data, this is, again, you're trying to take data that applies from one section of history and apply it to all of it. So, Mr. Horn, with your composition fallacy here, him, and this is another thing that I noted as I was watching these. Mr. Horn keeps calling out Pearl's logical fallacies. And now Pearl doesn't call out him on logical fallacies much. She tries to go at it with the actual, data, the stories, as she is used to doing. But Mr. Hypocrite Horn over here is all too concerned with the logical fallacies. And all of these fallacies are what they're called informal fallacies. And an informal fallacy in logic is not one that is inherently wrong for the fallacy. It's more like a weak argument would be an informal fallacy. It's a poorly made argument. You might be right. You can be wrong or right with an informal fallacy. It's formal fallacies. You're wrong. You're just, by using the fallacy, you're making yourself wrong. Is Pearl guilty of informal logical fallacies? Yes. Guess what, Trent? So are you. So am I. So is Nick. So is Steve. We all do it. A little bit of grace here would have done you a world of benefit in communicating with Pearl.
When I was unmarried, let me actually go through here. Well, yeah, when I was unmarried, I thought that having 2 folding chairs and a TV on the ground were appropriate living room furniture. But when you're married, your wife shows you something better, and she roots for you. A 2013 Harvard study showed that married men are less likely to get cancer, and married men are even more likely to survive cancer, showing that marriage is a good deal for men. So finally, I'd be remiss to point out neither men nor women invented marriage. God invented marriage. He gave it to the human race. Christ raised it to the level of a sacrament. And Pearl would have to give overwhelming data to show that something that God gave us is actually a bad deal for men. And she won't be able to do that because the data doesn't support that. Indeed, for most men, marriage is the primary engine that helps them live a long, healthy, and happy life.
So who the hell cares about how little furniture he had prior to marriage? And who the hell cares about men getting cancer? The differences. This is a debate about marriage, not about furniture or cancer.
Well, he's conflating everybody should enter this marriage, modern marriage, and he's talking about church marriage. I'm like, well, wait a minute. The modern marriage you enter is not the same form of traditional marriage that the history of the world has had, nor what the Catholic Church, nor what like Presbyterians traditionally uphold. What modern marriage is a different thing. It's a twisted form of marriage where you are signing, where if she exits, you're down for slavery, 20 years, or you're 20 years-ish, 18, 20 years of slavery, paying the person to leave you, and your kids are kidnapped from you. And your reputation's ruined.
Let me just say this.
That is not marriage.
A traditional marriage is an oath before God. Modern marriage is an oath before the state. And yeah, it kind of seems like if you get married in the church, it kind of seems like an oath to God. But in reality, it's an oath to the state. Because who governs marriage and dissolution and divorce? Is it the church or is it the state?
Both.
Yeah, but who actually takes their role seriously and does something?
The church won't do their job. I tried doing that. They didn't do jack crap. So, yeah, they don't do crap. They let the state handle it. And, yeah, daddy gets screwed over. That's what we call divorce great. GRAPE. Anyways.
Yep. All right. So we are actually going to skip. So the way this debate was structured, Pearl got the opening statement, then Trent got his opening statement, Pearl gets her rebuttal, and then Trent gets his. We're actually going to skip hers again. And we're just going to go straight to his rebuttal. It's a 5-minute rebuttal, which is classic debate format. So here we go.
All right, so I want to focus on one very clear fact that refutes Pearl's case, that she has not cited any studies looking at men and seeing what do they think. I mean, if marriage is such a bad deal for men, we don't need Pearl to tell us that. Why don't we just ask men themselves? Ask married men, were you given a bad deal? Were you given a raw deal? You go online, you go to Amazon,
Hold on. Well, marriage, while a man is married, is probably not a bad deal. It's the ones when it goes bad, when it becomes a bad deal. So how can you ask married men about what a bad deal it is? You'd have to ask divorced men, wouldn't you? Or am I missing something here?
Or men that are married a second time. Yeah, you could probably ask them. Yeah.
But they're divorced. Divorced the first time, so they're still divorced and remarried. You can't ask married men. whether it's a good deal. You have to look for the bad outcomes. Remember previously he talked about you have to look at bad outcomes to determine things. Like the airplane crashes. Shit. He's switching it to the other way around. No, this is faulty.
I would go ahead.
What have we been talking about modern marriage? Why we're against secular civil marriage as it is, today. Because what is Steve and Plutarch, you guys came up with this where it's like you're giving your wife what's it called? A button to a nuclear bomb, right?
And then asking her not to push it.
Meanwhile, she has every incentive to push it.
Yeah, she gets paid to push it, but we're asking her not to.
Okay.
Right. So I am exactly what Steve said. I'm divorced and I'm remarried. And I'm on here with you guys not supporting Trent Horn. I'm here helping you guys rip him apart. Why am I doing that? Because if Gallup asked me if I was happy in my marriage up until 6 months before it fell apart, the answer would have been yes.
Yeah, me too.
Right. So when you ask these guys matters quite a bit. How do you frame the question? He doesn't get into how the question was written, and I've seen how they're written in these polls because I participate in them sometimes. It's fun. It's occasionally you get a few bucks thrown at you for Amazon or something like that. But now I'm remarried, been married for quite a long time in my second, and I would say that I'm happy with this one. But I say so with the understanding now that I did not have in my first marriage that can change.
It can. I mean, you have a good wife.
And usually the men are months behind in realizing the actual state of their marriage. So.
Or
that's true. That's true. Although in my particular case, I shocked the hell out of my ex when I caught her 3 days. But yes, most of the time us men are behind. And just as a side note, we get dragged for being so behind. Honestly, I think that's because we're so tied up in trying to provide for the family, do work that, maybe we aren't paying quite enough attention. And that can be a thing. And I don't want to derail us too far with that, but it's like we need to be cognizant of why that might be the case. And it's not just men are idiots.
Hey, look, that happened today. We each had really kind of busy days, and we pulled together this stream kind of at the last minute, and that's why we're a little bit late. And we don't have that polished of a presentation. Maybe I hope it's entertaining to people, and our merit is in our discussion, not in the way we present things. Hey, we're improving. But hey, it's hard to have a life and then do something else. And this is another endeavor that we have. But,
right.
We still have regular work to do.
Yeah.
All other kinds of places, you can see people write product reviews and saying whether they got a bad deal out of something. And you should probably trust someone who actually tried the product and wrote a review instead of someone writing reviews about a product they've never tried before. And I've already shown the data that married men identify as being more happier than unmarried men. They live longer. They're healthier. So marriage is a good deal for them. It certainly isn't a bad deal for them. They get many benefits out of that. And Pearl has not refuted that. All she's been reduced to saying is that marriage is a bad deal for men because apparently women aren't worth marrying, which is just not true. She's pointing out flaws in women.
Oh, what does Ecclesiastes say? The wisest man, right? Solomon wrote Ecclesiastes. He talks about he found one righteous man among 1,000, but not one woman among 1,000.
Well, And isn't in the New Testament where I think it's Paul exhorts men to stay single and work for the Lord unless they need to be married for their own how do I phrase this? Their own worldly needs, shall we say? I don't remember where that is, but I'm fairly sure that's New Testament.
No,
that's
like
correct. 1 Corinthians.
1 Corinthians. There you go.
I want to point out. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I have a different thing I want to point out. So let's consider married men under Trent's analysis the winners, and divorced men are the losers. So we're talking to married men whether they're happy with the decision they got married. We're not going to listen to the divorced men. I think we should do a similar study of the lottery. Let's ask lottery winners whether they're happy with playing the lottery. I think we'd get a pretty positive answer there. But let's not ask the lottery losers of whether they were happy playing the lottery.
Not every woman's a virtuous woman, especially in this day and age.
Amen.
This day, especially today, with all the degenerate thoughts and single mommy hoes out there. 304s.
But she gives a pass to men. It's a kind of reverse form of simping, if you will, because men also fall under this. So let's talk about some of the things that she brought up. About the issues of being sexless, saying that 20% of marriages are sexless. That's only if you include senior citizens in the entire framework. As I said, the General Social Survey shows that unmarried men are twice as likely to be sexless as married men. So if you're a guy and if that's something that is important to you in your life, marriage is the covenant through which sex makes the most sense.
Hold on. So we get a lot of, it's only 20% of marriages that are sexless. We have to include all the senior citizens, the old people. And from men that I know, okay, I'm 61. I don't know, men probably lose interest in sex around the age of 80.
Around the age of coffin.
So it's only those old people that are not having sex. So therefore, our anecdotal evidence of when we were all married to you two were married, or I was married to my first wife, and you two, or Plutarch was married to his first wife, and Nick only has had one wife. So yeah, are we full of shit? That it's we must be aberrant, just out of the ordinary. What an astounding consequence or coincidence that three of us, of these rare men, would be doing a podcast together.
Clearly, we hate women that much.
Yeah, all right.
Hey, I dislike ungodly women. I love godly women. There's just not very many of them.
That's a reasonable view. I like it.
You have the most access to it, and it's the safest and best thing for you and for the children that will proceed from your union. She made a big deal about weight. Women are overweight. Women gain 20 pounds in marriage. She's probably referring to the Gordon Larson 2009 study on that. But that same study showed that married men gain 30 pounds over the same period. Unmarried cohabiting women gain 18 pounds during that period, and single women gain 15 pounds during that period. Mm-hmm. So all that proves is as we get older, instead of growing up, we tend to grow out. That's just life. And it's nice as you get married to have someone else to grow up and out with you. And mature people recognize that and don't just reject marriage because of a biological fact of reality. Women don't want to be wives. There's no evidence Pearl gave to support that conclusion. At least I can look at anecdotally. Think about it in your own life. How many times have you heard a girl lament that her boyfriend she'd love to get married, but her boyfriend doesn't want to get married, or he's dragging his feet. How
Why
many
would
times
he
have
not?
you can't interrupt him until the time is over? How many times have you?
Did it again. Sorry, dude. Got to call it out every time I see it. Yes, she shouldn't technically interrupt you. Dude, calm down.
Wait, he invited me to think anecdotally. What?
Indeed.
I watch these whatever podcasts. I don't really watch Fresh and Fit, but the majority of those women on there don't even have a desire to get married. So is that anecdotal evidence that kind of negates this historic thing of a woman wants to get married, but the man or the boyfriend doesn't want it? That's historical.
Well, there's a couple things here. Why get married? When you can get why buy the cow, right? Why get married when you get the milk for free? There's that, but also there's the risk. Some men are waking up to the risk. They see everything that's happened for like few generations. They say, I don't want to get screwed like my dad and grandpa.
And
Well,
uncle, cousin, and best friend, and my dad's best friend, and so forth.
Well, and there's another aspect going on here too. Of he's going to try and say, "Oh, well, the Fresh and Fit guys, that's selection bias." And the Fresh and Fit, they actually address the selection bias. As far as I know, they have the most complete data set on what women actually want, because most people don't know this. They actually record and categorize the answers women give to their standard questions, which is why they ask standard questions. They record how many times each woman is brought on the show. I think they said they've had something like 5,000 different unique women on their show. I'm not aware of a data set that's bigger than this for asking what the modern young, yes, they're young. They are targeting a demographic. But sorry, Trent, we're not talking about washed up 40-year-olds with, who are staring down a life of cats and wine. We're talking, the primary marriage audience here that you're talking about, particularly because you're talking about kids. You keep talking about kids. Well, that's a young woman's game. These young women, they ask. Fresh and Fit asks if they want to get married. And these women are like, oh, no. And then he'll try to say, oh, well, he's just selecting from Miami. They get a lot.
That's the whole culture.
Yes. Well, and they get a lot from Miami, but Miami is one of the most integrated cities into the United States in terms of women coming and going. And it only LA is better for representative. So, but Miami is LA of the East. You can find women from all, and they ask all the women, where are you from? I have heard every single state in the union, every single one.
Wait, have you heard North Dakota?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And there's nobody up there.
It's only 700,000 people in this state, or 750 or whatever.
Yeah. They've had women from North Dakota. They've had women from Wyoming. There's what, 600,000 people in that state or something like that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just testing you. Great.
Yeah. Women go where they can get access to validation and attention. And that's Miami.
Okay.
And LA and Las Vegas.
Bingo.
Or
I heard a guy.
Yeah. And where are the three?
The three shows. Whatever is LA.
No, Santa Barbara.
Santa Barbara. Yeah.
Close enough.
Yeah. Access Vegas is, well, Las Vegas. I think we can work that one out. And Fresh and Fit's Miami.
And so these three cities are not representative?
I guess.
When they get people from everywhere coming there? I don't know. I think they are.
Yeah, you're struggling with the concept of selection bias. I don't think they actually get into the demographic makeup of these shows. That's kind of esoteric. I was pausing this is what he might say, because I have heard other men say things like this, when they're defending his position. So I do want to call out that this is me making a projection based on prior watching of these sorts of debates.
Okay,
so
here's another anecdote on Fresh and Fit, one of them that I watched. There was a woman in Miami who had a business teaching green beans how to fit in. Green beans are the people from the hinterlands who come into Miami for the glamour life, and she teaches them how to be bottle girls or whatever that lifestyle they want, because they're newbies. They come in not knowing anything. Okay, well, if someone has a business doing that, don't you think there's a lot of a market, a lot of young women going there for that purpose?
Can't imagine how that might work. Can't imagine.
I say, oh, I really wish I could get married, but my girlfriend's just dragging her feet. Women are the ones, women control access, put it crudely, women control access to sex and men control access to marriage. That's how it's worked traditionally, and it still works today. Pearl asked, if marriage is such a good deal, why aren't men and women signing up for it? Well, that's like asking, if exercise is good for you, why don't more people go to the gym? Why is the gym usually empty? It's because marriage is hard. You have to say no to a lot of things as a man. If you choose to get married, you have to say no to things your little lizard brain tells you are good, like trying to hook up with as many women as possible. So people probably don't sign up for it because they don't realize the benefits, and they listen to the lower part of the brain instead of the rational part of the brain that could read studies.
Okay, here we go.
Wait a minute. Married men have twice the amount of sex as unmarried men. So your lizard brain, you have to give up the thing that you're not having because you're hooking up and not having it to get more of it if you're married. Okay, I got it now.
Well, notice he's doing the man bad, woman good again.
Yep.
Men are the promiscuous ones. You got to say no to your selfishness. Does he say anything about these 304s getting married?
No, well, later on.
Okay.
Oh yeah, we'll get there.
All right.
Covering hundreds of thousands of men, showing that they're happier, live longer, and have more sustaining, fulfilled lives than being unmarried. So some of the things that, when Pearl brings up, that divorced men are 9 times more likely to commit suicide, she's probably referring to the Kipawosa 2003 study. It's not that's not men are 9 times more likely to commit suicide who are divorced. They're 9 times more divorced men are 9 times more likely to commit suicide than divorced women. But that's only because men are just more likely to complete suicide anyways than women. They tend to choose more violent means to do it. So, but when you look at the data, never married men are still just as, if not more likely to commit suicide than divorced men. So that's the comparison fallacy once again. You talk about all of the risks related to marriage, and there are risks, but there are greater risks to being not married. So that shows marriage is not a bad deal. And as I said before, if marriage is such a bad deal for men, if it's so bad, why do 93% of men say they're willing to remarry their wives again if they had the chance? Why do 65% of divorced men choose and go and get remarried? It's because they recognize maybe someone wasn't right for them, but marriage was still right for them.
All right, so that's it for his rebuttal. And notice how the thing that really caught my ear was he switched out from talking about stats. There were a couple in there, but there weren't many.
Yeah, he quotes these stats, but nobody can verify them. I don't know where he's getting them from. Well, he quotes the one that Pearl supposedly, referring to, but he doesn't.
Okay.
How come he's not referring to his own stats?
Okay. Well, there's actually
Some of them
something I
were
want to
repeated.
pull out
Yeah.
there. There's something I want to pull out
Yeah.
there about what he's doing. What he's doing is a frame job. He's trying to say, okay, well, this is the study you're quoting. So he's naming the study to say, see, I know what you're talking about. This demonstrates that I have better command of the data than you do, because I can name the study that you're pulling from.
So
Pearl
he's saying
has the studies.
He's saying mine is my lower region's longer than your lower region.
Well,
Here, pull the ruler out.
Yes.
this also indicates that Trent is a highly intelligent man, because he does rattle off these things, and he's probably not consulting his notes. He's looked at this. He spent hours, tens, maybe hundreds of hours going over this, crafting his debate, working on this. This is not an off-the-cuff thing. And, I don't know if I could have a command of all these studies and interweave them as skillfully as he does. But to the fact that he's doing this so he can refute something and not to really mask the truth does not really mean he has good intentions.
Well, and this is something that we see in our society. We tend to assume that people, because they have command of something, that because they have confidence in what they're saying, well, of course they're saying the truth. And man, he's really confident, so he must be trying to be earnest. He's trying to help. See, he's got the data. See, he can quote the data, so he must be speaking the truth. And he's really confident about it. So clearly he has good intentions. I can very confidently tell you absolute bullshit with the intent of convincing you to do something other than what's best for you.
Hey, as a former car salesman, I saw that crap all day. Oh, well, you say they have better this, but our stats say it has larger cubic space in the rear seat and blah, 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 blah. Oh, but this study says this doesn't. But well, this study says this vehicle's more safe. Well, this study says this other vehicle's more safe, and so on and so forth.
So
you use them to support your pitch.
Okay, I want to buy a car that has the most horsepower per cubic foot of trunk space. Can you steer me to the right car?
Hell no. Probably somebody could.
There is a number for that. You can calculate it. But
I know. I don't know if somebody does.
It doesn't help you decide what's the best car for you.
Right.
It really doesn't. And none of what he's saying helps men decide what's best for them. He's here to try and twist stats. And I think we've hammered on stats a lot. This next clip is, as far as I recall, no stats. This is their back and forth period. And so, Steve, when I was clipping this, it was easier to just take that whole chunk of time.
That's fine.
So
we'll do it the same way we did this. We'll do it live.
Here we go.
And should men marry women that have had abortions?
Should men marry women that have had abortions?
Should men marry women that have had abortions?
I wouldn't say it's a deal breaker.
Should men marry women with STDs?
I wouldn't say. Here,
a quarter of women have herpes. Should men marry them?
I'm going to answer.
Okay, go ahead.
I would like to answer your question. I would say just as it is not a disqualifier for if a man facilitated an abortion, and 90% so for every woman who chooses to get an abortion, 90% of the time, the man is actively or passively supporting it. So just as it's not a deal breaker for a woman.
I'm asking for the future man. I'm not saying that he asked her to abort this is another man's kid. She's had an abortion.
No, what I'm saying is I'm applying an equal standard here. So I would say that it is not a deal breaker for a man to marry a woman who's had an abortion, just like it's not a deal breaker for a woman to marry a man who had facilitated an abortion.
Should men marry women
Hold on. First of all, did he answer her questions?
He answered the first two fairly directly. He didn't answer yes or no like she requested. The first answer was kind of that was a. He said no, that's not a deal breaker. And with the second, the STD question again, she had to pin him to no, it's not a deal breaker.
So now notice what he did. 90% of men supposedly actively or passively support an abortion. And so now he's equating it's a no deal breaker for men who have supported abortion, which we'll presume to be actively or passively, or women who have actually had an abortion. Now, one is according to the Christian, let's just cut to the chase. Abortion is ending of a human life with a soul. Therefore, it's a decision to murder.
That's correct.
And so supporting someone actively, okay, you're accessory. Passively, you're not an accessory. You're just not intervening. So we're conflating things here. It gets a little bit iffy. And, I've talked in the past about the eventual abortion guilt that a woman carries, because she knows at her soul, in her heart, she ended a life. And there's a biological component to that. She will always carry some DNA of that child within her womb. There is a component here. The body is not a machine. It is. There are things that we still don't understand. So Trent is totally dismissing those and confusing two different things.
Women that have slept with over 10 men.
Should they marry someone who's slept with over 10 men? I would say that when you have more sexual partners, that's definitely that's something that's concerning. That could be a red flag.
So you would say no?
But that doesn't apply. I'm not going to say that someone is unmarriageable because of one particular trait.
What about porn?
Okay.
So I want to hit this one a little bit. Note what he does here. He says he always comes up with this answer of, well, it's basically what I call the case by case answer. It's going to depend on the specific circumstances, which is really a way for women to weasel out and say, oh, well, but all my boyfriends were bad guys argument is what he's supporting here.
Couldn't you just say in general no? I think that'd be a way better answer.
Be a way better answer from a Christian standpoint.
Also,
yeah, general,
I know on the Whatever podcast, when Andrew Wilson is on there and he asked women a direct question, they always answer, well, it depends. Depends on how you define that, or this or that. There's never a straight answer. It's always, it depends. Well, Trent is acting like a woman here. It depends.
This is not a he and having watched the full interview, throughout it, he uses these female defense tactics all the time. The guy is operating in a female frame of mind, and we're not going to go through all of that here because frankly,
there's always an exception. There's always
an
exception. So the exception throws out the general rule. Oh, that's terrible. You're arguing by exceptions.
It's also not biblical.
No.
What
about women that have participated in porn? Should men marry women that have participated in porn?
I would say that that's definitely a red flag, but it is not it's not a deal breaker.
Do you have a son?
And here he does it again. Now, I want to stop you. I want to stop here and I want to call out something specific because this is going to come up a little bit later in the clip. Pearl actually asks a very specific question. It's a great question. She asks, should you marry women who participate in porn? And he's actually going to dissemble a bit here in a couple seconds. And she forces him to clarify, what I thought was a clear question to start with, even further. Right. So, but this is him trying to muddy the waters of the question.
Can I ask the questions, Pearl? Because you can keep asking questions and I'll never answer
because
them.
It just would be easier if I got a yes or no, because you keep giving me these roundabout and I'm just at yes or no.
No, I'm giving you good answers.
Oh, whoa. Did you see that smug thing that he did there?
Yes, I did.
Oh man, that was disgusting, and he's uncomfortable. So he's kind of going to the smug smile thing because he's kind of a little bit in a difficult position here.
Well, she called him out for his behavior. He is answering in a roundabout way. We have shown clear evidence that is exactly what he's doing. And she nails him for it. And I think you're actually seeing not just smug. I think you're seeing a little bit of contempt on Trent Horn's face. He does not view her as somebody worthy of having this debate. And I saw similar signals on Michael Knowles' much more controlled and practiced face, where it was more like Knowles was talking to Pearl from a position of, you need to listen to me, as opposed to trying to have a conversation with Pearl. So
yeah, that expression on his face right now looks like he's just took a big whiff of Limburger cheese.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd like to finish about pornography.
Go ahead.
I would say it's not a deal breaker if a woman had participated in pornography. Much the same way it is not a deal breaker. Well, it's something to be very, very worried about. So I'll answer it this way. It's very hard for me to find anything that's a deal breaker for marriage, except for maybe diagnosed severe mental illness, for example, or addiction to drugs, things like that. But that would apply to men and women. So when it comes to pornography, I would say it's very concerning if you have if a woman had previously engaged in pornography, just like it is very concerning if a woman chooses to marry a man who's previously viewed pornography.
But this is my question.
Did you hear what he did there?
Did
y'all catch that?
False equivalence.
Bingo. Put one on the board for Nick. He just said that women who participate in the act of creating porn are no different than men who watch porn. What? Come again, bro? Seriously? Okay, Nick, I know you're going to agree that both are a sin. I know you're going to agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too.
Sure. No disagreement here. But a girl who does porn.
He talks about this some more.
Okay.
It's like, why can't men have standards? And this is what I've noticed from the trad community and like the conservatives. It's like the quality of women keeps going down and down and down. And we can't even definitively say, hey, maybe we shouldn't marry porn stars. Maybe we shouldn't marry overweight women. You know, it's like we constantly get rid of standards for men.
No, I'm fine with standards as long as...
And we can't even... No, you're not, because you're not even definitively saying you shouldn't marry a porn star. Mm-hmm. You would never in a million years tell your son to marry a porn star.
An active, currently working porn star?
Even a
Really? Oh, don't marry an active porn star? Well, okay, I guess that's a good start.
Crappy dad. What a crappy dad.
Well, this is Michael Knowles. This is Michael Knowles again.
This is a distinction without merit. She says, don't marry a porn star. And then he says, well, you mean an active porn star? What difference does it make? An active or retired? Really? Would you advise your son to marry either? Really?
Well, we know Knowles would.
You said
not every woman's Rahab the prostitute, right?
Most prostitutes are just prostitutes, guys. Like,
Stop thinking you have the pearl or the sorry, I know she's on the screen, but like the the pearl of great price or like the rare ruby. You don't.
Yeah.
You don't.
Statistically speaking,
You don't.
probably
Don't
not.
fool yourself.
Even former, you would never come on to someone you loved.
Okay.
And this is why
you can keep talking, or you can ask me a question, because I was going to say I do believe in standards, Pearl. I just believe they should be applied equally. So
Equally? Standards applied equally? Where's the equality in the standards he's listed so far?
Oh, we're gonna get there. This is gonna be beautiful.
if women have a past in porn and that makes them unmarriageable, fine. Then we should just say any man who's looked at porn, don't marry him either.
The equal.
Is it okay for men to look at porn?
You can ask that during your cross-examination.
The equal equivalent would be a man that's participated in porn. That would be the equal equivalent if we're really going to go apples to apples here. But what I'm asking is, okay,
and there's lots of men who participate in porn that way.
a quarter of women, up to a third, have an STD. Should men marry them?
Should they marry them?
Yeah.
Just the same reasons would apply if you asked women, should they marry men who have STDs? Because men have lots of STDs. And if it's okay to marry them.
Okay, Trent, sorry to burst your bubble here, but and I don't have the data in front of me for this, but more women have STDs than men, and it's not even close because more women have access to sex than men do.
And I think more women participate in or do porn than men.
Oh, by a lot. It's
by a huge margin, because OnlyFans, there aren't any main porn stars in OnlyFans that are male. They are actors in women's. And then if you look at the porn movies, there's always more women than men.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Trent is doing another thing here. Oh, in the early Manosphere days on the forums, we called it MDTT. And women always used that. Men do that too.
Mm-hmm.
And Andrew Wilson has coined another phrase. What about the men, though?
What aboutism, right?
What about the men, though? Hey, and so she's bringing up things about women. He's saying, oh, men do that too. And what about the men, though?
Answer the freaking question.
You can't criticize women without bringing it back to criticism of men and comparing men and being as equally bad or worse than the women and the behavior of women you're pointing out.
Well,
which is exactly what's going on here. Women participating with porn. What about the men? They watch it, so they're equally bad.
Yeah, watching porn's bad, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah. That's a good way to describe it. It's not the same thing. And it's going to have a different effect on you. Doing porn has a very different effect on it than watching it is going to, because you're physically involved in the act. Like let's just state that up front.
Yep.
Yeah, but why is it what about the men? It's like
because men and women are equal. Men and women are equal, and we should treat them equally.
It's the crazy. I don't think men and women are equal.
Okay, let's stop right there. Are men and women equal?
In one sense.
In what sense?
In the image of God. They're both made in the image of God. They're both equally valued by God. Absolutely. But is it like equal all across the board? Hell no. That's an abomination.
Are they equal in ability?
No, the abilities are different. But physical ability.
Equal in their roles?
No.
Are they equal in accountability before God?
No.
Ooh, people are going to have trouble with that one.
Well, Numbers 30.
Okay,
I know.
Who is more accountable to God, men or women?
the man if he's an authority. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So does she want to be equal to a man in accountability? I don't think so.
I haven't met one that does.
Does she want to be equal to a man in the duty to provide for her family and earn money?
No, she wants to be equal in earning money, but not the duty.
With the
She wants
duty
the
to
result the
provide.
same, but not the duty. Yeah.
Does she want to be equal in plunging the toilet when it gets plugged?
No. Or when things go bump in the night. Hey, sweetheart, you need to go check that out. We're equal, right?
Does she want to be equal in deciding how the money should be spent?
No.
No, what she wants more say there, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yes, definitely need more say there. Yes.
So this thing, he has said this before, and Tim Gordon called him out on it. Because he says men and women are equal in dignity. And then he conflates that with equal in everything.
Oh yeah. Because like in Latin, dignitas can be like value before God, but also like status, like hierarchical. So
Hmm.
yeah.
So Trent, okay, so Tim Gordon, who I don't always, most of the time I don't agree with him. He's a Catholic guy. He's a certain take. I think he misses some things. I don't dislike him, but man, we don't coincide there. But he calls
Whatever the Latin word is.
Horn a male feminist. And I think he's accurate. Trent is a male feminist. It is in okay. This is pretty much where we're going to end looking at these clips of Trent. But I've never heard Trent talk about a hierarchy between men and women.
That's kind of ironic because, like, Tim Gordon talks about like the Tridentine Catechism, Roman Catechism. That kind of talks about a hierarchy, but I guess he doesn't even know like the same council and stuff that he was named after, which is kind of ironic. So,
well, who cares? Okay, yeah, I agree. But Trent mentioned Genesis,
yeah,
the creation story. Does Trent not know in the creation story that the man was created with dominion, and that was evidenced by naming of the animals, and Eve was created, or the woman was created from the man's side as a help. Yep. So it implies a hierarchy here, but then he never talks about the hierarchy. It's equality. This is what's that word for equality?
Égalité. French word is, or egalitarianism comes from that French word égalité.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then when that was too much, what did the church call it after that? Well, egalitarian light.
Oh, like they're compromised with egalitarianism, complementarianism.
Yeah, does complementarian? Okay, it gives it kind of winks a little bit at hierarchy, but not really much.
No, like in the very book CMBW, I think some of the articles are blatantly against hierarchical language. They want to shy away from hierarchical language.
So guys, here's the deal. We've gone almost 2 hours, and we got all these comments to go through on this debate. So do we want to go through the comments now, or do we want to save that for another stream? Because we got plenty of information. We can go through the comments next time, or to go through these is probably going to take us another, I don't know. What do you think? We can rattle through them fast, or we could take time and it could be fodder for another stream.
Well, I know what next week's stream's going to be, and I have a lot of production work to do on it, but we're going to turn our narrative eye towards the red pill next week, and this is something that I think we might have benefited us to do a little earlier, but we're actually going to take a look at what is a narrative, how they're applied. So, and how narratives move through, there's like a process to narrative shaping. And so we're going to look at narrative shaping next week. And it's going to be, in my opinion, it's going to be one of the most important streams that we've put out to date. And I say that as a finance guy who loves finance. So,
so you want to hammer through this?
Yeah, I kind of do.
Okay, let's do it.
Right.
So I excerpted all these, clipped them, and put them into a Word document, which is what you see up there. So the first few I saw were takes of women on this debate, and we'll go through these fast. I don't understand why she is saying women are paid to leave when statistically women are worse off financially after the divorce. Like what? Then Jewel C. Peach, she is literally absolutely deranged. I'm completely shook. Father, forgive her, for she knows exactly what she's doing. It's annoying how much of the debate was wasted by Pearl obsessively fixing on a woman's weight.
All she heard.
Do you think the woman who said that struggles with her weight?
Oh, probably. Well, women selectively hear, like they say, oh, men have selective hearing. No, we just ignore crap. Women like get super focused on things that they find insulting to themselves or friends. So they'll be like hyper focused on like weight and stuff like that, or something that they felt challenged them. How dare you? So they'll get the outrage. Yeah. And
Okay, so
the women are paid to
scroll it a
leave.
little
Who wants
bit.
to talk about that?
Scrolling.
The
Nobody.
reason Pearl sees women as low worth is because she sees herself that way and is projecting that on other women. It's just sad to see her on anything. It took a lot of courage for Pearl to do this debate. Let's pray for her conversion and her return to the church.
She hasn't left, y'all.
She hasn't. Oh, you know what? But what? Pearl has even called this out. You know, I'm going to pray for you. It's like, screw it. That's like piety claiming. It's just it's an insult. Okay, so I can't give you a straight answer. No kidding, Pearl. It's sad. She doesn't understand that people can receive a new heart through reconciliation to Jesus. Oh, I guess your past can be wiped out when you get that new heart, huh? Oh, okay.
No, there's process of sanctification, but people think bing, bada, boom, everything's totally changed, and all this past behavior will not impact anything in the future. That's not always
salvation. That's salvation.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you've escaped the consequences of your past bad behavior. They're two different things. Oh, we need to pray Pearl finds Jesus and returns to the church. Oh, another one of those. Fantastic work by Trent. Pearl wasn't only barking up the wrong tree, she was in the wrong forest entirely. Her whole "what do men get out of marriage" approach is so transactional and gross. Such a sad misrepresentation of both men and women. Sad to see someone so young being so jaded against her own sex too.
Well, and I hate to break it to you, Miss Carrie Braden, a lot of your relationship, even if you don't want to admit it, is transactional.
It is.
And I guarantee you that if you're married or you want to get married, you're going to be making a whole lot of transactions with your hubby, and you're not going to let him make nearly as many with you, because that's how women operate. The transactionality of this does not come from men. It comes from women.
So they have to teach men what they can do, which is their time and attention.
Mm-hmm. Bingo.
Most guys are clueless about that.
Well, that's... Go ahead.
So the next one is a man. This is one of the worst comments from a man. Weird. I'm a Gen Z man happily married to a Gen Z woman, and she is none of the things Pearl rattles on about. Maybe Pearl should turn off YouTube and try to be a real human instead of a talking head. Do you think that's a red pill guy?
No.
He's got his. He might be happily married. Whatever.
Oh, maybe he found that that pearl of great price.
Ruby, yeah.
Well, this is a guy who would answer yes to the "Are you happily married?" question.
Yes. I hope he stays happily married.
Okay, now we're into the man comments, and I think from the rest of these are mostly by men, because I had to scroll through a lot of women comments. It was like 90% women slamming against Pearl. You know, a lot of women prattle, and to go through the nuggets and find something that a man said, which is actually worth listening to, because the women were all the same, like the first few. So Pearl is actually trying to argue that marrying the average woman is a bad thing because marrying a porn star may end badly. Seriously? This is the best she got? Okay, that's a simpy one too.
Oh, yeah. This guy actually time codes for us, and we don't have a clip of it.
No, well, it's about weight. What are you doing, ladies? Get on the treadmill. I suddenly realized my body image issues aren't from the patriarchy, but from women like Pearl. Do you think this woman was concerned about her body image prior to watching this video, but now she's found someone to blame for her guilt about how fat she is?
Pretty much.
Well, if that's her picture,
body positivity. But look, they're deluded, man. They want to live in fantasy land where all their friends, oh, you look great, honey. 400 pounds, 300 pounds, 200 pounds.
Well, the key, so this is what we call coded language. So she's actually giving away what she is here. This is a left feminist person that is responding. I guarantee that they voted a blue ticket straight down the line. And the reason I'm bringing that up is I want to point out the coded language bit. This is not something that you're going to see out of even a TradCon type. They don't talk about the patriarchy like this, in part because us guys go around blowing up TradCon saying, yeah, well, you're a TradCon, you're for this, so what's your problem? So this is an example of how you can use coded language to see what the person itself is believes in.
Hey, Nick, why don't you read a few? I'm going to take a little break here. Be right back.
Okay, it says, just got to the part where Pearl says men shouldn't have to clean up women's mess. And that right there is the problem with the whole red pill view and why it and feminism are two sides of the same coin, competing for victim points and refusing to make positive changes until someone else changes other childish and toxic behaviors that make relationships fail in the first place. Men and women are not enemies. We're made for each other and we rise or fall together. Well, there's some good things that person says there, but they're assuming that the red pill is just the other side of feminism, which is not necessarily the case. The red pill actually gives men some actionable information. Now, I'm not like 100% red pill guy. I'm a Christian, but they do tell you, hey, lose some weight, take control of your finances, be in shape. What else?
Vet women.
What? Vet women? Yeah, those are good things. And be a high value man and vet for a good woman. A feminine woman, even usually.
Yeah.
And they tell you to stay away from feminist women. So I don't see how it's a flip coin of feminism, but okay.
So you can.
The statistics cited by Trent regarding married men's lifespans versus those of unmarried men are not never married men. They include divorced men. And no, a lot of us don't recover.
Oh, a based comment for once.
Yeah. Well, just imagine what it's like going through a divorce. I mean, a lot of you die in a sense.
And there's a point here that Stephen, including this, is I think he's trying to make, is that this, when we were looking through these comments, and we all looked through the comments section of this on our own time, most of the comments were as you've been reading so far. There were, however, a few comments, but the number, the weight is like, it's what, 95% simpy feminism, and occasionally you get a great one like this.
Oh, it was 90, yeah, over 95% women with vapid comments, just ad hominem attacks on Pearl, focusing on weight or something that triggered them to dismiss her and suck up to Trent. And now we should be getting to the male comments here.
This is Jay Rich. So legal marriage sucks in the context of breaking up in the USA today. If you could be spiritually married, but without having the government meddling in it, there'd be less of an argument. But aside from religious concerns, the risks outweigh the rewards. And I'm a married 10-year vet. She kind of killed it in this debate. So this is a pro-Pearl comment.
And a lot of these veterans see what goes on when they're on deployment and when they come back, especially to the younger folks, the younger guys that are, you know, they newly join the armed forces and they're deployed out and they do lots of stupid decisions, you know, find a woman and they want to get married, have kids and blah, blah, blah. And when they come back, guess what happens? They see it.
Mm-hmm.
Wife's gone, file for divorce. Not sure if the kids are even yours. All sorts of stuff.
I gotta say, this was a good video. As a fan of both Pearl and the Council of Trent, I think they both made good points. This was way more productive of a conversation than Pearl and Michael Knowles. Pearl does need to work on her debate behavior, and she should stop interrupting people, no doubt. But I like how the host was respectful, polite to both, and I think this is a good start to have a good conversation like this. Hey, yeah, I think that comment was written by a man.
Looks like real Bob Phillips. And there's a point I want to make here. If we go, so he calls himself the Council of Trent. A little bit of ego maybe in that one, just a little bit.
Little bit. Kind of an interesting play on words, though.
Yeah.
It's an okay comment. Yeah.
Pearl surprised me with how well she did here, but Trent obviously won the debate. Pearl made a good case for why no-fault divorce shouldn't exist, but not why marriage is bad for men. Also, I watch a lot of divorce proceedings on YouTube, and I don't think her one-sided anecdotes about men losing in divorces are the reality of how bad it really is for them in custody cases. Sure, a guy can pay $1 million for a lawyer, but that doesn't mean that he deserves custody if he is abusive and not present. The court will see through that. Many times the man doesn't want full custody or even 50-50 at all. He wants every other weekend. And plenty of times the woman wants to prevent him from having any parenting time, and the court doesn't let that happen.
Nick, you want to take that?
Kind of waffle.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's kind of waffling. He's right. He's waffling. Oh, it's not really how bad it is for them in custody cases. You have no freaking idea. She can make an abuse charge or accusation in a civil, so it's a civil case, right? There is no need for evidence. They can make this, and women, and according to their, whatever formula, men are higher risk than women. So if you enter in the possibility of him being abusive, not the fact that he's abusive, he will lose the custody.
100%. No custody.
You're arguing facts here that I agree with. But my comment on this debate, although I don't really agree with the guy, it is a balanced critique compared to the previous women. They were not balanced at all. Even though I don't agree with his take,
right?
I say, this is a man. He put some thought into it. Pros and cons. I understand where Trent is coming from when he says that we should forgive because that's what we're supposed to do as Christians. But nowhere in the Bible does it say just because you forgive someone's sins and have grace towards them, does it obligate you to then have to marry that person? You're allowed to choose someone whom you wish to choose who doesn't have that in their past. It does not make you or a bad person if you do not want to marry a former OnlyFans or porn star, or if you do not wish to marry someone who has an extremely high body count or does not keep care of their body, or many other reasons. The funny part is that during this whole conversation, when Pearl has said that women aren't worth getting married to, Trent continuously turns it into, what about the men, though?
It's like she was debating a woman.
She was. I think we have another girl here.
Go ahead, Nick.
Okay. Men know divorce wrecks the lives of one too many men, and no amount of debating will change that. You got 3 bags, one is empty, the other has 50K, and the other 100K. The 50K bag is given to you, but you got a choice to exchange it for one of the other 2. Most men would not risk it. This is the state of marriage today.
That's actually a pretty apt analogy, in my opinion.
It's apt. I think the money's too low.
Fair enough.
Keep going.
That's an apt analogy. All right. So it's Jude 8943, whatever. Long-term, happily married Christian father here. Good for you. I think Pearl makes some important points regarding the travesty of modern secular marriage. I wish she could have attempted to actually steel man Trent's position, but she either doesn't have the intellectual chops or she would have to admit she doesn't really disagree with his position in principle. Obviously, marriage in the secular West is effed, and obviously men are happier in successful marriages. I think men have the primary agency in society, and it's up to us to lead culture, and women for that matter, into a healthier and godly direction.
Okay.
I'll just say that last line there, that's idealistic. They don't. A certain group of elite men have primary agency in society, which are propped up by these feminists and all these other organizations.
So the last line is an ought argument. It ought to be this way. Men
he says have.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's taking the ought that he wants and trying to put an is in front of it. And we saw Michael Knowles doing the same thing, and it doesn't work. As to my on the steel manning Trent's position, looking through the debate, I'm not sure she could have. Like the guy is all over the place. You'd have to spend hours pinning him down on his data. And by the time you've done that, I mean, people aren't watching anymore. There's nothing left. So
we went 2 hours going through the 7 + 5, 12 minutes. We spent 2 hours going through about 12, 13 minutes of his stuff.
Right. So apply that to the full 2-hour debate. Well, okay. It would probably take us, all three of us put together, each probably take about 4 hours of effort. If we just split the video up into 3 chunks and said, here, debunk this stuff. So you're looking at about 12 hours worth of work to do this. Okay.
I'll read that one. If Pearl would have came equipped with the laws that make marriage unfair for men in America, this could have been gold. Her point is that America has made marriage extremely risky for men who may be used by a cunning woman to advance her position, which is a real claim, and this is happening a lot. Okay. Women can always choose to divorce you and marry the government. This debate should have talked about the laws and the loopholes women use.
Yes, but
Okay.
Trent would have almost nothing to say in that case.
But that's a different debate.
Yeah.
Completely different debate.
Okay, now I want to take this one. Pearl did well considering that she is a woman and Trent is an above average debater. Okay, there's 2 parts here. The first part is she did well considering that she is a woman. And that is true. Now, we have to acknowledge that she also has a lot of experience debating in maybe not the formal debate sense, but she's a lot of experience dealing with female men. The second one, though, I take issue with that. And not only do I take issue to that, I have evidence after this video was posted that shows that he's not. And it is a clip from Andrew Wilson where he actually reached out to Trent after this debate. And on his live stream, it was he mentioned, I believe it was after so he did the Daisy Chen interview, and then the night after on his stream, he said that he reached out to Trent and Trent declined.
Yeah, he proposed a what do you call it? A debate topic.
A crucible. Yeah, like come on the crucible and we'll debate.
Yeah, but there was a certain topic and Trent declined that. And then he said, well, I'm proposing a different one and maybe we can work something out. I don't think Trent wants to debate with a man, and especially not with a man of Andrew's skill.
That's exactly where I was going with this. And I think that we proved throughout the course of this unfortunately long video that Trent is not an above average debater. He is an above average bullshitter. And Andrew Wilson would have an enormous amount of fun with him. And Trent knows it. He is of above average intelligence, and he knows that Andrew would demolish him. And it doesn't serve to him to get demolished like that. So yes, Trent, I am actually, I'll just come out and say it. You're picking on a girl because that's all you can pick on.
Okay, what's the next one?
Scrolling. Oh my.
Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb here. At 44 minutes in, this gentleman lost the plot. I have 3 sons so far, and he can't admit or say that he would advise his sons to actively avoid women that would be bad bets for marriage. That's easy. That's the easy win in this debate. Sure, sons, don't marry active former porn stars. Don't marry obese women. Don't marry women with crazy mental disorders. Don't marry women with kids from another failed marriage. Don't marry women who currently have STDs. It makes it difficult to get him to take him seriously if you cannot candidly say that you'd give your sons better advice. You don't get to say to your sons, Maybe you should avoid the copperhead. You actually say, get away from the copperhead right now and do your best to snatch him away. Please note, I've watched divorce first and second hand. My dad has been divorced. My brother has been divorced. My brother-in-law has been divorced. My uncle has been divorced. I have friends that have gone through divorce. It's an ugly, ugly process that is weighted against men because there's no standard of evidence. The child support tables even punish you because they're based off income, not the actual need of the child, actual insanity. It punishes you for making more money, and there's zero accountability for the women who can spend the money on whatever she wants. It's not limited to food, school supplies, etc. First context. I'm a happily married man with an awesome wife, 3 beautiful sons, and a great job. When I look at the data with cold, discerning eyes, I cannot recommend that other men get married. It just doesn't add up when you put the cost-benefit analysis on the table. The standard results of marriage 100 years ago are the exceptional results of marriage today. It doesn't equate. So, here, another part that this gentleman gets wrong is a general observation. If marriage were so great, if it were such an enticing deal, then why has the marriage rate reached historic lows in the United States? It's because the risks and the penalties are higher than ever before, while the potential benefits are infinitely more difficult to get to. And social media use. Any and all studies related to dating prior to the advent of the phone and social media should be regulated to a separate folder of knowledge.
I agree with that.
Both mobile technology and social media have completely flipped the board, and older generations do not realize the effects of what we are already seeing. It broke the can of worms wide open and spread them around. This is and will have at least an equal effect on society compared to hormonal birth control.
Last guy.
Yeah.
Last but not least, the gentleman makes the mistake of equating the detriments of watching pornography to participating in pornography. Both are bad. One is clearly far more deleterious to a marriage, participating in pornography. They are not the same thing. There also wasn't time for this, but we do know that women favor different kinds of smut. If we look at audiobooks, ebooks, physical books, women read pornography while men watch it, because men are more visual while women are more auditory. I bet my whole retirement that if we compared the numbers of men watching porn to women reading it, we'd see that women are at least equal on this field. This doesn't belie the point that participating and viewing are anywhere near equal to each other. To be fair, Pearl does not handle herself well in this particular format. She keeps interrupting and was not practiced at this type of discussion. Rude not to follow instructions, lady. Now, could you please scroll back up? Let's highlight this man's name. This deserves honorable mention.
It does.
Nathan Tabor, 6901. And I left a comment under that and said that I will talk about this in our debate today and the description of our channel. So I hope he's watching. This was excellent.
Excellent comment.
The best comment I've seen so far.
Nailed it.
And Nathan, specifically, I want to address this right here to women reading it. There is no social stigma to reading softcore porn and romance novels. I guarantee you the women are reading their porn at a far higher rate than men are watching it on their computers or whatever, how they get it, because there is no social stigma for it. And if you look at the sales numbers for these romance novels, oh my God.
Let alone 50 Shades, right?
And
the movies that were made after it.
Well, so does anyone remember the meme of the three moms, with the, we love Edward, and they had the sign, they were screaming for this underage boy, and under the meme it says, if this were a group of men screaming for an underage woman, the police would be called.
Gosh.
Because that is exactly what Twilight was. And if you know what Twilight was, you know that 50 Shades is a rewrite of Twilight by a single mommy's dommy mommy fantasies. So
before we move on, men and women are equal. I assure you, I have not cherry-picked comments here. I took the best comments, most articulate, meaningful comments, typical of women, and the best comments of pretty much all the comments of men. Men have articulate, a measured, rational analysis, and they don't really credit Pearl with winning. So are men and women equal in their capability of assessing, taking in, and analyzing information? Even that function. Okay, someone else's turn.
I can read this one.
Well, there you go.
This is unpaid labor, unpaid support is assumed and anecdotal. I could tell you my story, but Trent demonstrated pretty clearly that people only care how women feel, not men. We are on our own, in marriage or out.
Pretty much.
Nick, what say ye?
Yep, they don't give a flying F. I mean, your friends do, your family does, but like society, hell no. Suck it up and be a man,
And this right here is what both of you guys have been talking about. They assume how much it costs to the mom. It's all an assumption. There is no hard actuarial table evidence that defines how these numbers are set for child support. The judge can decide if they don't like the number, they can make it go up.
Mm-hmm. I think there is a limit, but yeah, it's like 50% or something like that.
Well, yeah, we can't have the guy going broke, because then he wouldn't go to work, and that doesn't work for us. All right, Nick.
Okay, first, and whilst I agree with her on the nitty-gritty of modern marriage, she is right on theology. Divorce is common, and even Catholics do that sin. We must not paint a rosy picture, but must not lose sight of its wonder. Also nice to catch the stream. Okay.
Okay.
I don't see where she really disagreed with that, but okay.
Can you reply, trust a married man to tell you whether or not he made a mistake? Or can you really trust a married man to tell you whether or not he made a mistake marrying their partner? That's a death sentence. She will ruin his life till the end of days for admitting he's not happy. They say they're happy because they have no choice to say anything otherwise.
They got that. They got the what's it called? The remote.
They got the big red button, and they're paid to push it. So don't give them
don't tell her you're not happy. Ruin his life to the end of days.
Okay.
From here on out, I modified to make them easier to read. So go on.
Oh, okay. Pearl is on to something. She might not have gotten around to better articulating her points and seeing nuances, but she's definitely speaking lots of truth, particularly about how TradCon people really understand the plight of young people in modern marriages and also the nature of women in marriage. The church and society at large always seem to blame men for women's shortcomings. Parens, yes. They never extend such grace to men. the disguised feminism and manipulation of many conservative women use God and church to hide disrespecting their husbands, etc. Yes. Pearl will grow, and a lot of people will see what she's talking about. And I just want to say that I hope she grows. I hope more men hear what she has to say. I hope that more men come and they listen to what we have to say in the Red Pill. You know, I understand that Pearl is a woman, that she's never lived this herself because she's a woman, but at least she gives a shit. You know?
I appreciate Pearl.
Yeah.
She's bringing this stuff to light and she's giving a voice to things. She's not an innovator, but she is reporting on what's happening. And in our modern society, people may pay more attention to what women say than what men says. So I'm glad Pearl does what she's doing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Trent makes a huge deal out of a study statistic about men saying they're happy. If the married man says he's happy, check out David Eddington, PhD's book, The Abusive Wife, that shares how it takes a long time for men to realize, under the practice of Christian men just long suffering and being meek and lowly, that they're reinforcing their wife's controlling habits. The husband can be 2 to 4 decades into a difficult marriage before trying to pivot away from it, they think that they can create the desire in their wife that way. Eddington himself goes on to talk about how unpopular reality is and regrets participating in not hearing the reality of what men are saying prior to him having the book's understanding. And this goes back to what we were saying earlier about Trent's misuse of the data to manufacture statistics is not true. If it takes 4 decades for men to realize that they can't save the hoe and they need to get out, well, the country in 1980 was 2/3 the size of what it is today. Just so that right there, just on a raw demographic standpoint. And so, okay, there were fewer marriages to destroy today than there were 40 years ago.
This also speaks to something else. When men take an oath, they stand by it, for better or worse, because it's what they pledged to do. They don't walk away from their duty, even when it becomes unpleasant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You want to read this one? You do it?
I'll do it. Yeah.
All right.
Catholic dad. Okay. I love Trent Horn, and it goes without saying that he is the more experienced and polished debater. So I only offer criticism with that in mind. Clearly, Trent won the debate, and despite taking the negative position in the debate, Trent also provided the better positive case. It is a positive case for why marriage is a good deal for men, which went above and beyond his duty in the debate, since the burden of proof was on Pearl to defend the affirmative position and make a positive case. Having said that, here's my criticism. I have seen Trent debate many, many times, but I have never seen him use so many below the belt antics in debating. I'm not sure if he has a personal disgust for Pearl and her position, but he has debated others that I know he probably finds personally reprehensible. And I have never seen him resort to such tactics. Name calling and mocking are not what I expected of a Trent Horn debate. And while I understand that Pearl is using these tactics too, maybe even more so than Trent, her use of these bad tactics can be understood given her inexperience in formal debates, but the same cannot be said of Trent. I also thought that Trent made a pretty serious blunder when saying when trying to say that if men shouldn't marry women who engage in making porn, then women shouldn't marry men who watch porn. And Pearl rightly called him out on that. I was stunned that Trent would make such a rookie mistake. It was very uncharacteristic of Trent. He just seemed off his game. And I again wonder if his personal feelings got in the way of his usual approach to debating. like I said at the beginning, I'm a huge Trent Horn fan and of his debates, and I have no doubt that he won this debate, and I agree with his position regardless of the debate, but this was not his strongest performance in a debate. And it seemed that he played down to his opponent's level rather than elevating the debate to a higher standard with his approach. I say all this because I don't want anyone to have the excuse of writing off Trent and his position in this debate or future debates on what I would describe as a subpar performance with childish playground antics. God bless. Okay.
Oh my. Oh my.
That's hilarious.
Well, okay. So this commenter here, the Catholic dad, so I'm going to assume he's a man. I'm just going to make that assumption. Going so far as to say, okay, Pearl using those tactics too. Okay, where? Was Pearl using those tactics when she was saying things that you didn't like? Because I didn't see her using below the belt antics. I didn't see her signaling disgust on her face, signaling contempt on her face. Smugly saying, "Well, you can't interrupt me, and you got to wait your turn." Okay. You say that you know that Trent is capable of better and that he wasn't on his game. Okay. To be fair, none of us had the time to go watch Trent's other performances, so we don't know what he's capable of. But we do know that he is unwilling to go up against Andrew Wilson, which to me is telling that maybe the debate performance had less to do with Trent's skill as a debater and more to do with the fact that he's not actually that good. He's just really good at target selection. And he kind of stepped in it with this one.
All he did was throw out, it was just stats.
That's not debate, by the way, guys.
Yeah, it was stats. And okay, Pearl, in logical thinking, a woman is typically at a disadvantage to a man. So Trent has that greater ability for logical thinking. But so Pearl kind of debated like a woman, but Trent debated like a woman too.
Yep.
And this guy's kind of calling it out, and he wants to like Trent. He wants to believe Trent.
Okay.
But he has more criticism of Trent in this comment than he does of Pearl.
Tried to equivocate, just make equal some of the tactics. It's like, I didn't really
known better.
Yeah, I didn't really see better, or I didn't really see Pearl making like that number of just swipes, ad homs, if you will. I didn't see her doing that. She actually tried.
Well, we're going to have to invite people to watch the whole thing.
Yes.
After they've watched our stream. And now they're maybe aware of some of these things, and they'll view it with a different lens. And hey, draw your own judgment. You're free to disagree with us, and hey, leave a comment. And hey, we might even invite you on a stream, and we can discuss it. We're not really into blood sport debating, but we like a good discussion.
In case you hadn't noticed in the past 2.5 hours.
Okay, I think they both have valid points. One is viewed from a happily married person's view, and one is viewed from the single complete opposite of the spectrum. Trent is absolutely telling the truth from a religious and societal historical point of view of marriage, while Pearl is telling the truth from a secular social current point of view of marriage. Trent's view is in the metaphysical mixed with positive outcomes, while Pearl has firsthand experience with society's commodification of marriage that has lost any grounding in traditionalism. His version used to be the norm, and her version is the norm now. People have changed, and so has their understanding in relation to marriage. I see both points of view. Only until we need each other will we stop acting immorally and behave like we do need each other? Unfortunately, I feel like marriage for the secular majority is going to the pits.
Sounds like he needs to listen in to what we're talking about.
Yeah. Papa Pigeon 7589. Listen in. We will we'll help you out here.
We're Christians. We agree that Trent comes from this Christian point of view. I think he's wrong in his egalitarianism and stuff and some of his stats, but Pearl's dealing with reality as it is right now. So.
I agree. Oh, this is Merkbot 7. I think you could accept that currently marriage is a bad deal today for men, and also accept that there is not something better. Also, accepting that wives should be submissive to their husbands, one can also accept that wives and husbands have equal dignity and are submissive to each other as Christians in general, in the general Christian way. Also, headship does imply ultimate authority. In most interactions and situations do not require the authority to be applied. History shows that men have always and will always see marriage as the best and ultimate relationship to have with a woman, and they desire it greatly, regardless. I also wanted Matt Fraud to expand on his exposition about how trads tend to trash men. This one is one from
I
Nick.
like this one. This is one what?
It's one for
I
you.
wanted to hear your comment on this one.
I really agree with what he's saying. Like, I don't see anything. I think what he said is, so far as I can see, is 100% correct. I think he's right on point.
Okay, guys, we're getting close to the end. I think this is 12 pages, and we're ready to move on to page 10.
Yep.
Go ahead, Nick.
All right. Yes, Pearl is terrible at debating, but the men's rights movement has very good points, and Trent does bad ignoring them. This is only going to distance young men. This is more of your boomer. This is more of your boomer delusional feminist discourse. Agree.
Agree. Okay, I'll take this one. Pearl isn't arguing so much against the institution of marriage as she is against the government involvement in marriage. And this goes back to the point that we made at the beginning of the video. She has never actually come out and said she doesn't like marriage. She has always said she doesn't like marriage the way we do it today.
All right. That's essentially what Rollo says too.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like Trent, but Pearl is the worst rep for these views. I'm a married man, and my anecdote tends to show Pearl is right. There's a lot of unmarriable women, yes, even within the church. Modern feminism has crept in like a hydra. Absolutely.
Ooh, he uses my language that I use in my book. Oh, good.
Ooh.
Hydra.
Maybe he's read your book.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Okay. Sure. I'll read this one. Trent won on the merits by pointing out that marriage as such is not as much of a raw deal as the alternatives are. But even given that, Pearl still makes a valid point. Under our current laws and culture, marriage is a worse deal than it otherwise might be and looks even worse than it is. Now, this perception, which is at least partially accurate, dissuades men from marriage. Given that a man's avoidance of marriage to woman X is sometimes to his benefit, but other times to his disadvantage, given all that, what ought we to do? For example, if marriage laws could be changed, in what way ought they to be changed? If female behavior could be changed, in what way ought they to be changed? Ought it to be changed? If male behavior could be changed, in what way? And if men's and or women's perceptions of their options are incorrect, in what way ought those perceptions to change to become more accurate? Are there habits that all women could adopt which would help them attain a good marriage and avoid a bad one? Are there habits that all men could adopt which could help them attain a good marriage and avoid a bad one? And there are there also habits which, as more women adopt them, the marriage landscape becomes better for both men and women without disadvantaging the individual women who adopts them. Is there more? Oh boy. Okay. Are there also habits which, as more men adopt them, the marriage landscape becomes better for both men and women without disadvantaging the individual man who adopts them? I think those questions would be more enlightening than the actual debate was. They're good questions, I guess. Sure.
They would, and we're going to be diving into some of them over here as we go along.
I'd say
these ones this one particularly, we'll have to do something on that here at some point.
Yeah. Well, the answer is, hey, buddy, you have to answer those yourself. But watch our stream, because we're talking about all this stuff. And it's going to take you a while to think through it. And hey, this is the place to do your thinking.
I can take this one. I'm a young man, 21 years old, and I 200% agree with Trent. But something I am concerned about that Pearl is kind of right about is that my generation is a lot more promiscuous. Pearl mainly blames women, and she's wrong. But as a guy, I would like a woman who values her chastity as I value mine. Now, I'm not perfect. I've had one partner before. I took my relationship with Christ seriously. But most girls I know have had at least 3 partners. And women are the ones who control the sexual marketplace. And men are the ones who do the approaching for the most part. So all of the pretty women who are more promiscuous nowadays have a lot of men pursuing them, and it's just nerve-wracking for me. There's not a lot of chastity out there. Even the Christian girls that I've known don't value their chastity. Okay, guy, you need to come over here, listen to us for a little bit. First off, the more pretty a woman is, the less likely she is to have had a long list of partners. Statistically, it's going to be your 6s and 7s that are the worst. Anywhere from 4 to 7 is going to be where you're going to have the worst of your problems, because those girls are just pretty enough to get themselves into all kinds of trouble, but they're not so pretty that men aren't afraid to approach them. Most men are still afraid to approach a 10. So there's that going on there. Honestly, though, you sound like you're kind of new to the marketplace. Let me welcome you in, and good luck, brother.
Well, he's 21.
Yeah.
And he's on the fence between he wants to believe that women should be as they ought to be, but he kind of sees that they are as they is.
Mm-hmm.
And he really hasn't been in the red pill. He still isn't. He commented on here. But, okay, he doesn't really understand the nature of women and how to navigate through this mess. And that that takes time to figure that out.
Hey, he sees a lot better than I did at his age, so good for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah. I know Pearl can't debate, but damn, she wiped the floor with Trent so hard. So basically, Trent is saying, listen, dude, you have all responsibility, no authority, because it is better to make children with anyone. And by the way, prawn is not a deal breaker. Just insane take. Okay. Based comment right here. Oh, we're just about done here.
Oh man.
I have been married for 7 years and am 35 years old. Last year, I had sex with my wife less than 10 times. This year, just once so far. And all my colleagues at work and where I worked before said the same thing. All my wife's friends' husbands say the same thing. Married men live in sexless marriage, just that men lie about it when they are not. And this is, to me, this is an interesting point, because it gets to, there is still very much a cultural sort of view of a man who doesn't have sex isn't a man. And so men feel the need to lie about how much sex they're having in order to make themselves look like they are men. But once
do that, men do that.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing. Men overstate their sexual encounters. Women understate them. It's an iron rule of the red pill. Like, and it's demonstrable fact. Look, everything Fresh and Fit goes out there. Got cheat code for you men, by the way. If you ask a woman how many sexual partners she has, most of them will only tell you how many boyfriends they've had. Women. Yeah, women do not count one night stands or F buddies as sexual partners.
Oh, the one laughing. That's so sad.
Well, this is what Fresh and Fit exposed.
Well, I've said it this way. They only count the ones that count and don't count the ones that don't count or the ones they can't remember.
Yep.
So, 10, 20 years ago, the rule of thumb was take what they say and multiply by 3.
Now, I'd say take what they say, multiply by 10. You'll be getting close.
That's bad.
Somewhere in there. It's a multiple. It's debatable.
But look at the numbers coming out of Fresh and Fit. Like, guys, those guys have the data for you. You might not like it, but as we established earlier, they're pulling from the entire country.
Yeah. That's the red pill. It's like, here's reality as fantasy as you see it, and here's how it actually is. Or red pill or unplugging from the matrix.
What is it Thor always says? The red pill is a suppository.
Yeah.
All right, I think these are the last two here.
I'll
Trent.
read the 119. Trent, I'll do that.
Oh,
119, Trent, get into a legal contract where your counterpart is paid to leave and where you will get all the liability. But don't worry, you'll also be in a leadership role as long as every decision you make is approved and agreed to by your wife. Oh, there's your modern complementarianism.
Bingo. Yep. By the way, gentlemen out there listening, if your wife has to approve all your decisions, you ain't the leader. I'm just saying. That ain't how this works.
I'll read the last one. A 45-year-old man can't have a girlfriend? Trent clearly has some hate towards single men. And I disagree with Anna Kasparian. I think Pearl won this debate. As a single 40-year-old man, it just further makes me believe that I made the right decision staying single. Her comment about $100,000 is the biggest deterrence for me. That is a stupid contract. If I can retire early staying single, but can't do it if I get married. I want kids and would like to get married, but I've always just followed my intuition, and I know all the prospective wives I've met would have been disastrous. In our modern age, it's like you either need to get really, really lucky to find the perfect woman, or you need to rely on someone with fundamentalist religious beliefs. But even then, it's not a guarantee. You are giving up $100,000. The system needs to be fixed, or we will run out of kids.
It's already happening.
We need to do an update to the show we did on demographics to start with, because there were some numbers that were published a week later, and it's a disaster.
Oh,
I really like this guy. This guy, yep, I understand where he's coming from.
And there are good women out there, but
really
rare.
Lucky.
Well, he's right. Because they're rare, and I knew some of them. They got married young. They married very good men, and they have stayed married. So generally, the good ones aren't on the market very long, and you have to be a absolute knockout as a guy to get them.
Yeah.
Whew. That's a lot, guys. Whew. A lot of information.
So, okay, let's summarize this, and I'll start. Okay, I chose a different way of looking at this than other debates, and just focusing in on Trent because he irritated the hell out of me. So
Yeah, me too.
we went through and picked apart his arguments and just, the initial bit. But we've kind of shown that he was playing fast and loose. And then we went through and showed the difference in the quality of the comments by women versus men. And the comments by men were thoughtful, and they put them in there, and they're just hidden. And I'm glad to bring them out, to highlight them and share them, because you know what? I really didn't have to discard any comments that I could discern were written by men. Those were pretty much all of the men comments, and I went through lots and lots of it. I don't know how close I was to the end. I probably may have missed one that was further down, but there were a lot of comments. And I really appreciate what those men wrote. I think very few people will read it, and I'm glad that we could bring those insightful comments to the public view.
Right. Now, what are we doing Wednesday?
Well, I don't know, Nick. I think that's on you, isn't it?
Well, we've been talking about marriage a bit. So I think Steve had the idea, he threw at me about discussing civil and secular marriage and religious marriage.
All right.
So we'll have a lot of different ins and outs between those three things. I don't quite have an outline yet, but we might define certain things and just leave it up for discussion.
All right. And
so pros and cons of marriage and different types and what can we do?
And that is Wednesday.
That's
Wednesday. That's the show we titled Countercultural Sexuality. And that is at 7:15 Central Daylight Time, 5:15 Pacific Daylight
I thought it was at 5:45.
5:40. Yeah.
5:45. Oh man.
5:45 Pacific. Come on. 5:45 Pacific. 6:45 Mountain, 7:45 Central, and 8:45 Eastern.
And then on Monday, there is a bit of an open question yet. If everyone's available on Monday is a holiday. So I want to point that out. So we might have to move it. We don't know for sure yet. But the next Exposing the Narrative is going to be where we talk about narratives and in this, what do the different types of narratives that are used. We're going to talk how narratives are used to shape your view of a given community. And we're actually going to dive into the Red Pill community and some of the stuff that's been going on there recently, and what we're noticing, the changing trends there, and how you guys can think about them, how to approach this rationally. And so that's going to be the next ETN here. Please tune into that one as well. We're not going to throw anybody under the bus, but this is, if you're in the Red Pill, this is for you, because we need to be looking at ourselves a little bit with everything that's going on.
Well, that's more factual, but it's also meta narrative. But today, this actually fit Exposing the Narrative, because we revealed some of the narrative behind Trent's behavior.
Mm-hmm.
We touched on a few possibilities for his motivation. We didn't really, maybe we didn't talk about that much. But, we'll leave it up to you to decide. But there was a narrative here, and we exposed it. So, yeah, next week is going to be a blockbuster because we're going to talk and kind of name the narratives and develop them on a more plain to see basis. How do you want to describe that?
Well, I would say we're gonna name it and shame it. Kind of like my goal for that one is to give you guys tools to start categorizing the narratives you're seeing, because once you can categorize it and name it, you can understand it, and it gives you a defense to what the shaping that people are trying to do against you. And it doesn't have to, and I will say this right now, because everyone's going to assume that I'm saying this, it does not have to be an organized effort. And in fact, I don't think this is. I think this is just how people produces certain types of narratives. And so we're going to get into all that. So, yeah. It's been 3 hours, fellas.
Yeah.
We enjoyed it. Anybody have any closing thoughts?
No.
No, all good.
No.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Catch
us on Wednesday, next Monday.
Yep.
I'll take care.